America's credit card debt has just hit a record high. But the real problem isn't how much people owe, it's how the system is built to make that balance feel almost impossible to escape. In the next few minutes, I'll show you exactly why and the framework that breaks the cycle. Welcome to Fenora's Studio, where we break down the money systems that affect everyday Americans using real numbers, not opinions. If that's the kind of content you're here for, stick around because this one gets deep. Here's the problem in one sentence. Millions of Americans are paying every month and their balance barely moves. Total U.S. credit card debt is now in the trillions, and the average household carrying a balance is paying it down slower than ever. This isn't about willpower, it's about a cycle spend. Make the minimum payment, get charged interest, watch the balance stay put, and sometimes borrow more just to keep up. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how that cycle works, why the math is stacked the way it is, and the practical framework to break out of it, one decision at a time. Let's start with the part most people underestimate: what it actually costs to carry a balance month to month. When you use a credit card and pay it off in full by the due date, you typically pay zero interest. That's the grace period, and it's the entire reason credit cards can feel free to use. But the moment you carry a balance past that due date, the grace period disappears, not just for new purchases, but often for your entire balance. From that point on, interest is calculated daily based on your average daily balance and added to what you owe. That interest then becomes part of the balance the next day, which means you're now paying interest on interest. This is compounding, and it works against you the same way it works for you in a savings account. Here's what makes it sneaky: the cost doesn't show up as one big number. It shows up in small increments, buried inside a bill you glance at for 10 seconds. A few dollars here, a few dollars there, but stretched across months and years. That's real money, often thousands of dollars, that never buys you anything. It just pays for the privilege of owing money longer. This is why two people who spent the exact same amount on their card can end up in completely different financial positions. One pays it off monthly and pays nothing extra. The other carries a balance and slowly pays a second, invisible price for every single purchase. Now let's talk about the minimum payment, because this is where most of the confusion happens. The minimum payment is not designed to get you out of debt quickly. It's designed to keep your account in good standing. That's it. It's usually calculated as a small percentage of your balance, plus whatever interest and fees accrued that month, often somewhere between 1 and 3% of what you owe. Here's why that matters. If your minimum payment is mostly covering interest, only a small sliver actually reduces what you originally borrowed. The principle: on a large balance with a high interest rate, it's entirely possible to pay the minimum every single month for years and barely dent the original amount. Card issuers are required to show you an estimate on your statement, how long it would take to pay off your balance, making only minimum payments, and how much interest you'd pay in total. Most people never look at that number. When they do, it's often shocking, turning a purchase that took 5 minutes into a debt that takes over a decade to fully repay. This is the core trap. Minimum payments feel responsible because you're making a payment on time. But on time and making progress are two completely different things. You can be a perfectly responsible payer and still be moving toward debt freedom at a pace of practically zero. Let's talk about the number that quietly controls all of this: the APR, the annual percentage rate. Average credit card APRs in the US have climbed into the low to mid 20% range for many cardholders, and some cards charge well above that, especially for people with lower credit scores or store-branded cards. That number sounds abstract until you apply it to something ordinary. Picture a routine purchase, to say a few $100s for a repair, a gift, or an unexpected expense. Paid off next month. It costs exactly what it costs. Carried for a year at a high APR, that same purchase can cost considerably more once interest is factored in. Carried for several years while only minimum payments are made, the total cost can end up close to double the original price, sometimes more. This is why the same purchase can be completely harmless for one person and financially damaging for another. The price tag in the store never changes. What changes is how long the balance is carried and at what rate. High APRs don't just punish large debts, they quietly inflate the true cost of everyday spending, turning a $200 purchase into a much larger long-term obligation without the beer ever making a single big decision. This brings us to the mechanism that ties everything together: revolving debt. Unlike a car loan or a mortgage, a credit card doesn't have a fixed end date. You can pay some down, then charge more, then pay some down again. The balance simply revolves. That flexibility is exactly what makes credit cards useful in emergencies. It's also exactly what makes them dangerous during financial stress. Here's the pattern that traps so many households. Income doesn't quite cover expenses one month, so the card fills the gap. Next month, the minimum payment plus interest eats into the budget again, so the card fills the gap again. Slowly, the balance stops being an occasional tool and becomes a permanent fixture, never fully paid off, never fully escaped, just managed month to month. This is rarely caused by one irresponsible purchase. It's usually caused by a repeating shortfall, rent increases, medical costs, job instability, inflation on everyday goods, met with a tool that was only ever designed for short-term flexibility, not long-term borrowing. Once interest compounds on top of a revolving balance that never shrinks, the debt can start to feel less like a decision and more like a weight that simply exists in the background of every paycheck. So how does someone actually get out of this? Not with panic and not with shame, with a framework. 3 steps. Step 1. Stop new debt from being added. This sounds obvious, but it's the step most people skip. As long as new charges are being added, at the same time old balances are being paid down, the balance can never meaningfully shrink. This might mean removing a card from daily use temporarily, or simply tracking spending closely enough to know the gap is closed. Step 2. Prioritize repayment strategically, not randomly. 2 common approaches. Paying off the highest interest balance first to minimize total interest paid, often called the avalanche method, or paying off the smallest balance first to build momentum and motivation, often called the snowball method. Neither is wrong. The math favors the avalanche method. Human behavior often favors the snowball method because early wins keep people going. The best method is the one a person will actually stick with. Step 3. Build a realistic payoff plan, not a perfect one. This means calculating an actual monthly amount above the minimum payment, even if it's small, and directing it consistently toward one balance at a time rather than spreading thin across several. Consistency beats intensity. A modest extra payment made every single month will outperform an aggressive payment made once and abandoned. None of these steps require earning more money overnight or feeling ashamed about how the debt happened. They require treating debt reduction as a system, the same way the interest and minimum payments were a system working in the other direction. Here's the reframe worth remembering. Credit card debt isn't a personal failure, and it isn't solved by panic or shame. It's a system with predictable mechanics, grace periods, minimum payments, APRs, and revolving balances, and predictable mechanics can be understood and eventually redirected. The people who escape this cycle aren't the ones who never struggled with debt. They're the ones who stopped treating it as a mystery and started treating it as math. One decision, one payment, 1 month at a time. If you want more clear, research-based breakdowns of the money systems affecting everyday Americans, subscribe to Finora Studio. The next breakdown is already on its way. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.